Janis Ivory. We are in the mayor's office, which is frequently called the town hall by people who are not from Rendville. This building has always been the mayor's office, and it's where they had city hall meetings. And in the summertime, the doors would be open. We lived directly across the street, and in the front of our house, we had a bench that set out under the window, and you could sit on the bench out front and watch city council in there making big decisions and doing scary talk. And it had to be big decisions and scary talk because you were not allowed even in the sidewalk while city council was having this meeting. So we used to sometimes sneak around the side in the summertime to try and listen in the windows. But my mother was on city council and she had eyes in the back of her head. So sometimes without looking around, she didn't say go home or anything. She just called your name. And you knew you were in trouble. You know, behind here was the city jail. You know, she liked to say, are you afraid of the city jail? You need to be. I have the key. I hated to even walk past that place because I just knew someday that's where it was going to be. Next to here is an area that we hope to make into a patio as a memory, sort of a memorial garden for the people of Rendville who have done significant things. And beyond that is the little white house that we would like to renovate and put together as a spot for people to access the history of Rendville. Altogether, we would like to turn this into a historic district. The organization has not had this as a conversation about what we plan to do in the future. What I would really like to see is Rendville as a rest stop along the highway with the economic buildup that's going on in Hocking Hills and the fact that Route 13 is already designated as a scenic highway and it goes right by Rendville. I can see this being a rest stop if we could get it officially designated as a rest stop, which would actually pull people in here and allow us to be able to share our history. So the world knows Rendville and it never goes away. There are lots of trails, hiking trails and biking trails in the area. Since Rendville is located within the Wayne National Forest, it's possible that motorcycles have also been accounted for. It wouldn't surprise me to find that out. I see a rest stop where if you have your food, there would be a facility where you could stop and eat it, kind of thing. I don't think supplying food would be a realistic thing about it, but maybe vending machines or something of that nature, but a lot of information, someplace to sit. For me, Rendville is one of the most relaxing spots that I know of, so I think it would be relaxing for everybody else. I think we could do some like short hiking trails through the area. I saw a a documentary not long ago of a group that had put QVC codes on headstones in cemeteries, so that you go through and you could run your phone over it, and it gives you a history of the person who's in that particular grave. I would like to see us be able to do something like that with Rendville, and make Rendville Cemetery also one of those spots that would like pull people, because I think the history of the people who are buried in that cemetery is worth exploring and everything. The people who came to Rendville, who made Rendville what it is, I think are people who had a vision without knowing, possibly without knowing that they had a vision, but internally had the kind of fortitude that allowed them to make more of themselves than they thought they could be, and that other people thought that they could be. And I think they continue to do that. I think it's a genetic strand that runs for over and over and over, and people still continue to do that sort of thing. We were forever getting notices from people whose kids are doing remarkable things now. That, you know, we had, in one of our celebrations, we celebrated Sophia Mitchell, who was the first female appointed mayor, first African American female appointed mayor. She has a grandson who's responsible for doing the maps for the state of Ohio. I mean, you know, he's an awesome artist. But that sort of thing is like, when is it going to stop? Is that family going to continue to do that? And does it continue to spread? Does it go beyond that? You know? And that's not the only family that does things like that.
You mentioned the cemetery. Can you give us just a sample of some of the people that are buried up there?
My great grandmother is buried there.
What's her name?
Her name is Janis Ivory, and the story of Christiana that I remember is that she married a man who was a traveling preacher, and she had lots of kids, one of which became my grandmother, and she lived to be almost 100 years old. She taught me how to knit, and when I was very young, I would come to visit my grandmother in the summers, and we would sit on the porch in rocking chairs, and she would talk about things that in this day and age I wish I had written down, because she would tell me stories of herself. I felt really knowledgeable because I was able to, and I don't know what started the conversation, but there was a conversation that came up about slavery, and I was able to explain what a bed warmer was, because she had told me while we were sitting and rocking on her front porch kind of thing. And little stories like that I don't remember anymore, but she's buried in that cemetery, and I know that was unique for her, because we were not allowed to talk about my grandfather's family. We know that there was something happened. We know that his mother passed away as a patient in a mental hospital, but we were not allowed to ask questions about why that was. and it's driving me up the wall because I don't know. But that's the way they did things. They taught things without talking about them. I envy that ability, and I wish I could have learned how to do that. I cannot remember anybody ever sitting down and saying, you don't look that man in the eye when you're talking to him. But I knew not to do that, so I don't know how I learned that. You know, and it was like, you know, if we're walking down the street, this is where you walk and this is where I walk. Nobody ever said that to me, but, you know, and I know part of it was a pat here, a tug there, a push there to get you where you're supposed to be kind of thing. But I wish they had just opened their mouth and told me. Of course, talking is something I often got in trouble for. I was actually born in Columbus, and I lived in Columbus until I was 10. And when I was 10, my parents split up, and my mother gathered her little brood and went home, and we came to Rendville. And I was in Rendville until I graduated from high school. And then I went running back to Columbus. And after about 9 months, I went running back to Rendville. And then my mother moved back to Columbus, and I went back at that time. But
there was and
yes.
still is, right?
Yes.
A lot of migration back and forth between Columbus and here.
Yes. Yes, I will come to Rendville every time I get an opportunity. No, I can't say that now. Until recent years, I would come to Rendville anytime I got an opportunity. Age and my health keeps me from doing that at this point. Rendville is my safe spot. And a lot of times when I'm feeling the need, to have a hug from a place, Rendville is the place that I go for my hug. Zanesville was a first stepping stone toward an economic base. It was our big city. And I can remember the Greyhound bus used to go up and down 13, and right out at the corner was the bus stop. Right out there was the bus stop, and you could get on the Greyhound bus right there and go to Zanesville and spend the day and come back, and the bus would let you off right there at Rendville, just like a city bus, only it was Greyhound. You know, and Zanesville was where you'd go. I can remember my first trip on the Greyhound bus by myself. In high school, when you were a senior, they gave you a little cedar chest. Every graduating senior got a little cedar chest. And they didn't actually give you the chest. They gave you a slip where you had to go to the jewelry store and pick it up. And my first trip on a Greyhound bus by myself was to go get my cedar chest, because that meant I was a graduating senior. I can remember there were times that we came from Columbus for the 22nd celebration. I can remember looking out the front window of the house and watching them put up the dance floor, what became the dance floor, the bandstand in front of the house. And because they were out there with nails and hammers and everything, I was not allowed to go out that front door until 3 o'clock. I don't know why that sticks with me, But it was out there, and the band was out there, and um, I remember being disappointed because I wanted to see the ox roast. I wanted to actually see the ox roast. And I knew I could see where the smoke was, so I knew where it was going on. But I wasn't allowed to go over there by myself, and none of the adults would take me over there. When I got old enough that I didn't need an adult to take me over to the ox roast, I was really disappointed because they said you can get a sandwich. Anybody who wants a sandwich can have one. So we had to come over to this window, and you just walk up to the window and they hand you a sandwich. And it's like, but I want to see the ox. It's like, oh, here it is, it's on your bread. You know, I don't remember, I know everybody talks about the, all of the rides and everything. I don't remember the rides, so I don't know, maybe in my memory it wasn't.
Was the
It was
ox roast
just
like and you may know this, or you know this, was it like a thing like the men did? Like the men would be over there and maybe they'd have a little something to drink and they'd be over there?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was
Yeah.
like
The
you didn't
men
have
the
no
men
business
did
over
it, and the Masons sponsored it. I did find that out later on, that the Masons would sponsor the hog roast, and it was, the sandwiches were free. All you had to do was walk up to the window and ask for one.
Was there a Mason lodge in town?
There were several. We have some of the paperwork that we showed that there was several. Yeah. By the time I was in my teens, I don't remember there being a Mason lodge in town, but I do remember that the third, was it a Thursday? The third Thursday, do you remember, Jerry? Buckeye Lake Day, was that on a Thursday?
I think it was.
Is it the third Thursday of August was Buckeye Lake Day? And the Masonic lodges took over Buckeye Lake Day that day, and there were just African Americans from all over the state of Ohio that went to Buckeye Lake for that day. And it's only been recently that I found out that it was actually the Masons that were sponsoring that. But
That brings up a question because Rendville wasn't segregated, but Mason lodges
are.
are. Yeah. And so I wonder if there was a white lodge and a black lodge here.
There very well could have been. People are people. People are people, and it's okay to be angry. But once you settle up with yourself, once you identify within yourself why you're angry, you can get beyond it, and people are just people. And I lived for a while in Pittsburgh. And at the time I was there, I lived in the Salvation Army had a residence for women, and I lived there. And like, if in other cities, I guess they had the YMCA or the YWCA, yeah, would offer housing for women who didn't have any place else. But in Pittsburgh, it was the Salvation Army that did it. It was the first time that I ever had to fill out an application for anything where it did not ask for my race. And it really surprised me, so I didn't know what was going to be there. But it was very interesting in that I had my own room. Everybody was in their own room. There were no joint rooms or anything. But the person to my left was white. The person to my right was from India. And the person across the hall, we never knew what she was because she wouldn't tell us. And for her, it was the biggest joke that she wouldn't tell anybody whether she was white, black, from another country, whatever. She spoke several languages. And when you said good morning to her, you never knew what language was coming back at you, you know. And probably had we been older, we would have been able to figure it out more. But it was the biggest lesson that, and always when I talked to her, when I interacted with her, I always thought about Rendville. Because it was just like, you know, yeah, there were some things that happened that were segregated, that weren't totally integrated, but at the same time, it wasn't so unacceptable that it made life miserable. You know, I might not be able to go to the movies in Corning except on one particular night. But on that one particular night, all of my friends were there with me. You know, so what if, you know, if it had been another night and my friends weren't there, I wouldn't want to be there either. You know, but it was that sort of a thing that you looked at.